Chosen one, stop scrolling. This message is not random, and it's not for everyone. If someone recently entered your life and felt too familiar, too intense, too powerful to ignore, listen carefully. That connection wasn't sent to complete you. It was sent to test you. At the exact moment you began rising, focusing, and stepping into your purpose, a distraction was activated. They called it a twin flame. But not every twin flame is meant to stay. Some are sent to see if you'll abandon your mission for emotion, to see if you'll trade clarity for confusion, to see if you still doubt your own worth. Here's the truth. Most people never hear. It didn't work. You didn't fall. You didn't lose yourself. You didn't forget who you are. And that's why everything is shifting now. If you felt the distance, the silence, the sudden clarity, this video will explain exactly why it happened and what it unlocked inside you. Stay with me until the end, because once you understand this, you'll never look at intense connections the same way again. If this resonates, subscribe now, like the video, and comment "I choose myself" to lock this message in. Chosen one, listen carefully. What you experienced was not love by accident. It was not coincidence. And it was not fate in the way movies or fairy tales describe it. This was strategic. You were marked for elevation long before you realized it. The moment your inner world began to shift, when your focus sharpened, your discipline strengthened, and your tolerance for chaos dropped, your destiny line became visible. That visibility triggered a response. Energy never rises unnoticed. When someone begins stepping into purpose, something always attempts to interfere. That's when the counter-move was activated. They sent someone, not just anyone, but someone who felt strangely familiar, someone whose presence touched old emotional memories, someone who mirrored your wounds, reflected your dreams, and reminded you of versions of yourself you thought you had healed. This person didn't just enter your life, they resonated with you. They spoke your emotional language, they understood your silence, they seemed to recognize you when no one else ever truly had. Naturally, you called it a twin flame. And in many ways, that label made sense. The intensity was immediate. The connection felt deep before logic had time to catch up. There was no slow build, only instant recognition. But here's the truth, most people are never told, and almost no one wants to hear. Not every twin flame arrives to unite. Some arrive to delay. This connection wasn't designed to move you forward. It was designed to pull your attention sideways. It was meant to make you revisit emotions you had already outgrown, to reopen questions you had already answered, to blur your instincts right when your intuition was becoming sharp and dependable. The timing was not accidental. Just as you were breaking free, just as momentum was building, just as you were learning to stand firmly in your own energy, this distraction appeared, and it didn't look like an obstacle. It looked like destiny. That's what made it dangerous, because the intensity wasn't romance. It was recognition energy. Your soul wasn't recognizing a future. It was recognizing a familiar frequency from the past. That's an important difference. Recognition energy feels powerful, but it doesn't always mean progression. Sometimes it simply means you're being tested to see if you'll choose comfort over growth, familiarity over expansion, emotion over mission. And this is where the miscalculation happened. They underestimated you. They thought you'd spiral emotionally. They thought you'd lose focus. They thought you'd abandon your mission in exchange for connection. They thought you'd confuse passion with purpose. But they misjudged one critical factor. You were already awake. You didn't disappear into the connection. You didn't forget who you were becoming. Somewhere deep inside, you felt the friction. You sensed that something wasn't aligned, even if it felt intense. And that awareness, that quiet inner knowing, changed everything. Because once someone is awake, distractions stop working the way they used to. And that's where the story truly begins. Let's talk about why this connection felt impossible to ignore. It wasn't just attraction. It wasn't just timing. From the very beginning, the intensity skipped the usual stages. Conversations went deep almost immediately. Topics most people avoid in early connections surfaced naturally. Eye contact felt electric, almost unsettling, like something ancient was being remembered rather than discovered. Time seemed to bend when you were around them. Hours passed unnoticed. The outside world faded. That wasn't chemistry alone. That was energetic access. This person didn't just connect with you emotionally. They tapped into layers of you that were already active, already evolving. They met you at a frequency you were operating on internally, not one you were displaying outwardly. That's why it felt rare. That's why it felt significant. And here's the part most people misunderstand. Your twin flame wasn't sent because you were weak. They were sent because you were becoming dangerous to the system that thrives on distraction, dependency, and emotional confusion. You were stepping into independence. You were learning to self-regulate instead of seeking reassurance. You were cutting emotional cords that once defined your identity. Old patterns were losing their grip. You are no longer feeding cycles of validation, chaos, or self-doubt. That kind of internal shift doesn't go unnoticed. So the distraction had to feel meaningful. It couldn't look like temptation. It had to look like destiny. This person activated your old identity in subtle ways. Not enough to pull you backward completely, but enough to test your awareness. They activated your need to be understood in ways others never managed. They touched your desire to be chosen, not for what you provide, but for who you are. They awakened your hope that someone would finally walk beside you instead of trailing behind or pulling you down. That hope was the entry point. But here's what they didn't account for. You didn't lose yourself in the connection. Instead, you observed it. You stayed present. You watched patterns instead of excuses. You noticed the push and pull dynamic, the moments of closeness followed by emotional distance, the inconsistency that contradicted the depth of the words being spoken. You felt how your peace shifted. You noticed how clarity faded the moment you abandoned your routine, your focus, your discipline. When you stepped away from what grounded you, the connection felt overwhelming. When you returned to yourself, the confusion surfaced. That awareness was crucial, because slowly, quietly, without dramatic endings or emotional explosions, you made a choice. You chose yourself. Not out of anger, not out of fear, but out of alignment. And that choice broke the entire plan, because distractions only work when you forget who you are. They lose power the moment you stay rooted in your purpose, your habits, your self-respect. The connection couldn't control you because you were no longer operating from emotional hunger. You were operating from awareness. That's when the energy shifted. And that's why what comes next wasn't separation by loss, but separation by awakening. This is where everything flipped. Not with an argument, not with a dramatic ending, but with a decision you made quietly within yourself. The moment you stopped chasing clarity, the truth revealed itself. You stopped asking for explanations. You stopped trying to decode behavior. You stopped filling in gaps with hope. And the instant you did that, the energy shifted. What had once felt magnetic began to feel unstable. Suddenly, they became distant. Not all at once, but gradually. Responses slowed. presence weakened. The emotional availability you once felt became inconsistent. Mixed signals intensified. Warmth followed by silence. Connection followed by withdrawal. Where harmony once existed, emotional confusion took its place. That wasn't rejection. That was exposure. The connection could only survive while you were uncertain. It fed on ambiguity, on your willingness to wait, to interpret, to hope. The moment you anchored yourself, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, it lost its grip. Because clarity is dangerous to illusions. And here's the key revelation most people miss entirely. The twin flame didn't fail you. They completed their role. They weren't meant to stay. They were meant to reveal. Their presence highlighted how much you had grown, not how much you lacked. Through the friction, you saw what no longer fit. Through the confusion, you recognized what you no longer tolerate. They forced you to see how far you've come. You noticed that emotional inconsistency no longer felt exciting. It felt draining. You realized that intensity without stability wasn't passion, it was imbalance. Patterns that once kept you engaged now felt obvious and unnecessary. That awareness marked a turning point. Instead of derailing you, the experience activated you. Your intuition sharpened. You no longer ignored subtle discomforts or explained away misalignment. You trusted what your body felt before your mind tried to rationalize it. Your standards elevated. You stopped negotiating with uncertainty. You stopped accepting partial effort disguised as depth. You no longer mistook emotional struggle for meaning. Your tolerance for emotional chaos vanished. What once pulled you into overthinking now triggered clarity. What once tempted you to chase now reminded you to step back. The emotional noise quieted, and in that silence, something powerful emerged: self-respect. And now you're moving faster than ever. Not because you're chasing something new, but because you're no longer being slowed down by something old. Your energy is no longer split. Your focus is no longer fragmented. Your path feels direct again. That's why it backfired. The distraction was meant to pause you. Instead, it accelerated you. The illusion was meant to weaken you. Instead, it refined you. What was meant to confuse you ended up confirming your strength. And from this point forward, nothing enters your life without meeting you at the level you now stand on. Chosen one, what happened wasn't loss, it was initiation. What left your life wasn't meant to stay, and what stayed within you is far more valuable than what walked away. You didn't lose a soulmate. You didn't miss your chance. You didn't fail a test. You gained clarity. You gained self-respect. You gained emotional sovereignty. That shift may not have felt dramatic in the moment, but it changed everything. Because for the first time, connection stopped being the source of your worth. You no longer measured your value by attention, effort, or consistency coming from someone else. You reclaimed ownership of your emotional center. And that's the biggest shift of all. You no longer look for validation in connection. You no longer wait for messages to feel worthy. You no longer interpret silence as rejection or failure. You no longer assign meaning to absence. Instead, you understand that what's meant for you doesn't require decoding. It doesn't create anxiety. It doesn't ask you to shrink your needs to keep it alive. You understand something now that only experience can teach. Peace is proof. Alignment is quiet. Real destiny doesn't drain you. It grounds you. The constant emotional highs and lows are gone, and in their place is something far more powerful: stability within yourself. You don't feel bored. You feel centered. You don't feel empty. You feel complete. That connection trained you in ways you didn't realize at the time. It sharpened your awareness of emotional manipulation, even when it's subtle. It taught you how to recognize energetic drains, disguised as depth. It exposed false intensity, connections that feel powerful but lack consistency, effort, and emotional safety. You no longer confuse emotional struggle with spiritual growth. You no longer chase people who are uncertain about you. You no longer negotiate with mixed signals. And because of that, your energy has changed. You now move differently. You speak more directly. You listen to your intuition the first time instead of waiting for proof through pain. You protect your routines, your focus, your peace, which means the next connection you attract will feel completely different. It won't feel chaotic. It won't feel confusing. It won't require you to shrink, explain yourself, or overextend to be chosen. It will meet you where you stand. It will respect your pace, your boundaries, and your clarity. It will complement your life rather than disrupt it. There will be depth, but also steadiness, passion, but also safety, connection without loss of self. And the most important difference, you will no longer abandon yourself to keep someone else. That's strength. That's growth. That's initiation completed. What comes next doesn't test your worth. It confirms it. Here's the truth they never wanted you to realize. The distraction failed because you are no longer distractible. That's it. That's the shift. That's the line you crossed without realizing how permanent it would be. You didn't resist temptation through force. You didn't fight emotion with denial. You simply grew beyond what once had power over you. You didn't fall. You didn't spiral. You didn't abandon your purpose. You paused, observed, and chose alignment over attachment. And you walked away with your power intact. That matters more than any connection ever could. Because power retained is destiny protected. Now everything feels different. Your path is no longer foggy. You don't feel pulled in multiple directions. The internal noise that once clouded your decisions has quieted. Your focus is sharp, not obsessive. Your clarity is calm, not rushed. Your energy feels guarded, not closed. Protected, not hardened. You no longer leak energy into confusion. You invest it into what builds you. And that is why what's coming next isn't another test. It's confirmation. Tests arrive when we're unaware. Confirmation arrives when we're aligned. The universe doesn't need to challenge what's already solid. It simply responds. And now, it's responding to who you've become. The universe no longer sends distractions your way, because distractions can no longer hook into you. They don't match your frequency anymore. They don't speak your language. They don't recognize your boundaries as negotiable. So instead, it sends reinforcements. People who show up consistently. Opportunities that don't drain you. Connections that feel steady instead of overwhelming. Paths that open without you forcing doors. This is how you know you're on the right track. Nothing has to be chased. Nothing has to be proven. Nothing has to be over-explained. You move, and things move with you. And if this message found you at this exact moment, understand something deeply important. You were never meant to stay stuck in emotional loops. You were never meant to cling to half clarity. You were never meant to sacrifice your future for familiarity. You were meant to awaken. Awakening isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It happens quietly when you stop betraying yourself for connection and start honoring your intuition without needing validation. You were meant to ascend. Ascension doesn't mean leaving people behind out of ego. It means leaving patterns behind out of respect for your future. It means choosing growth even when comfort invites you to stay small. And now you're in motion, real motion, the kind that doesn't rush, the kind that doesn't doubt, the kind that doesn't look back for permission. Nothing can stop what's already in motion. Not false flames that burn hot but leave nothing lasting. Not emotional illusions that mimic depth without substance. Not spiritual distractions that arrive dressed as destiny. Those things only work on versions of you that no longer exist. You are not who you were when this journey started. You see clearer. You stand firmer. You choose wiser. And from this point forward, everything that enters your life will have to meet you at the level you now stand on. Not because you demand it, but because you embody it. That is the final truth. Only chosen ones understand. And once you understand it, there is no going back. As this message comes to a close, take a moment and recognize how far you've come. Not emotionally, not spiritually, but consciously. You're no longer reacting the way you once did. You're no longer chasing clarity from people who can't give it. You're no longer questioning your worth based on someone else's uncertainty. That alone tells you everything you need to know. What you just lived through wasn't meant to break you. It was meant to sharpen you. The confusion you felt wasn't a setback. It was contrast. It showed you the difference between intensity and alignment, between attachment and purpose, between emotional noise and inner truth. And now you stand different. You move with awareness instead of urgency. You listen to your intuition without needing external proof. You choose peace without guilt. That's not withdrawal. That's mastery. From this point forward, your life responds differently to you. The doors that open won't require you to chase them. The connections that arrive won't ask you to prove yourself. The opportunities that present themselves will feel steady, grounded, and right, because they're meeting the version of you that no longer negotiates with doubt. Remember this: clarity always comes after courage, and you had the courage to step away from what felt powerful but wasn't aligned. That choice changed your trajectory more than you realize. So if you're feeling calm instead of excited, centered instead of emotional, focused instead of distracted, don't question it. That's not emptiness. That's alignment settling in. You didn't lose anything real. You gained direction, and whatever comes next will not pull you away from yourself. It will add to you. It will respect your boundaries. It will support your growth instead of testing your endurance. Stay rooted. Stay aware. Stay intentional. Because the version of you watching this right now is no longer preparing. You're already walking the path that once felt distant. And when you move forward from here, move knowing this: you are not late. You are not behind. You are exactly where you need to be. Everything else will meet you there.